You are listening to Something Rather Than Nothing. Creator and host, Ken Vellante. Editor and producer, Peter Bauer.
This is Ken Vellante with the Something Rather Than Nothing podcast. We have artist Justin C.M. Brown in this episode and real art enthusiast, art every day, encouraging folks to do art and look at the world in an artful way. Justin, welcome to the show.
Ken, thank you so much. I love that introduction. That was awesome. I just want to start by saying thank you so much for having me on the podcast, and thank you for creating a podcast that, you know, I the intersection of art and philosophy is very exciting to me, and so I appreciate you creating the content. I really do.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that. I've always, when it comes to philosophy, I've always thought about it most vibrantly in terms of art, in terms of creativity, in terms of literature and writing. Just thinking of where philosophy is, and I see your enthusiasm for that. So I know we're matched up. We're not matched up that way. So Justin, tell folks a little bit about. I mean, you're art. Studying art now. You had a project last year where you are, directly creating art each day. Just that as a lifestyle of learning and creating. Can you tell the listeners just about that dynamic, say, over the past year?
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start with the advice. The advice that I have that I found made it possible for me to work on and create art every day is priming your conditions. And so when it comes to the series I was doing last year, inspired by true events, a lot of that was digital art, created in Illustrator, vector-based, or photography-based. It was kind of a mixture of the two. And so when I say priming my conditions, what do I mean? I mean having ideas, photos ready to be used, uploaded, downloaded onto my computer, like ready to go. As soon as I sit down, like I don't have to mess with my phone. I don't have to mess with Google Drive. Like I took a photo the day before, I uploaded it, I downloaded it, it's ready. And so when it comes time, because creating art takes a lot of time, and unfortunately in this modern society, we don't really get a lot of it to invest in creativity. And so
Sure. I
find that in spare moments, the thing that really helps for the creative process is taking 10 minutes or whatever and going through the last photos that I took, upload it to Google Drive, and then download it to the computer. So it's like ready in a folder for me to open up and start playing with. The vector images is a whole, basically one of my biggest things is I want to encourage people to value their own creative thought in the smallest ways. Whether it's a small phrase, like a short 3 words, 4 words, or a little drawing that just pops into your head. I always have my notepad. I have a Google Drive or a Google Doc. I have clipboards and sketchbooks and all this stuff ready to catch. It's like a fly ball. So you're like in the stands and you're like, okay, here it comes. And you got to catch it. And so I have these notebooks that are filled with these really small. My drawing skills are not great. I'm not like an expert drawer or anything. So they are very casual. I will say they're casual sketches of these different ideas. It's like, okay, it's a cube, and then it's got like these colors. Take really rough notes whenever it pops in, and it takes about 10 seconds. It's really like you see something out of the corner of your mind's eye and you're like, okay, what was that? Let me just write that down. And so when it comes time to do the artwork of the day, I have this notebook full of tiny stuff. Like, it's not, they're not super complicated sketches, but the sketch itself to me represents like a placeholder or something. It's like, okay, this is the idea. How do I get back to that? And so as far as doing art every day, the key is priming your conditions, making sure that your workspace is like, I don't need to say clean because I know a lot of artists don't really care for a clean workspace. Great. But the thing is, getting your workspace set up the way that you want it, getting your materials in a condition that you can use immediately, and having a lot of materials to choose from. I try to take 3 or 4 photos a day of, things I see, stains. I love stains on the sidewalk. I take I take photos of stains and of flowers and of architecture, and just random patterns that I see, or whatever catches my eye. And so I'll take 3 or 4 of those a day. I upload those, and then when it comes time to, like, because it's like 30 minutes, an hour, you don't have a lot of time to make art, unfortunately. I wish I did. But having those ideas in advance really makes the most out of the creative time that you do have. So priming your conditions is the big thing as far as being able to create art every day.
Yeah, I gotta say I really appreciate like digging right into like, making art and just thinking through the pieces to make it easier so that it will happen. I've recently started an online art class organized over a couple months that is really inspired and really directed towards the processes that you said, not the exact processes, but being ready, being prepared, using little pieces, priming the conditions, which is just a beautiful way to put it. And so I'm in that mode more now than I've ever been. So I'm really sensitive to your comments around that, and you talking about how you're able to create a lot of different disparate things. I wanted to ask you, Justin, we're talking art, right? So we're talking creating art pieces, and I wanted to ask you right up front, what is art? What are your thoughts about what art is?
If I can tag one more thing onto that last conversation.
Absolutely.
The concept that I understand that made this work for me is that there are 2 things that happen. The moment of the idea and the moment of the creation of that idea are not the same thing, and they don't have to happen on the same day. When it comes to having a scratchbook or like, taking a photo or whatever, there's your idea, but it doesn't have, I mean, sometimes it's better to do them, back to back consecutively, but thinking about it in terms of the idea and the creation of the idea allows you to separate those 2 so that the idea is involved in the preparation. And then, so you've got your paint, you've got your canvas, and you've got your idea. And then it all comes together in that moment of creation. So
I really think that's helpful. Not to jump in but just like, I think sometimes when we're like, we see something that inspires us, or we're like, oh, I'm feeling all angsty because I haven't created that type of thing. If we do it just raw like that, which, somebody might want to do, but you have to get into the idea. Yeah. Where are the materials? And I think what you're saying here is be set up for art, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you live in a city, you don't make it to 5th gear very often. Manual transmission reference. I know that's not very, very well set up, but like, if you drive a stick shift car in a city, you don't make it to 5th gear very often, but you do switch between 2nd and 3rd a lot. So like collecting those ideas, and I mean, honestly, there's a lot of joy in collecting the ideas, because in order to collect ideas, you have to value them. If you don't value your own creative thought, you'll never get out of bed to write them down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it starts with, hey, I'm a human being. I have this crazy creative capacity. And I do believe that all humans do. And it's a process of seeing it and saying, hey, this is what's going on in my head. I'm going to write it down and I'm going to try to share some of it. And so there's this process of valuing your own creative thought. And that's the idea part. The creation part, very different, takes time, costs money, all that. But if we really dig into the value of the creative thought and collecting it and just looking at it from the idea perspective in like that skeleton wireframe mode or whatever, then you see, you have 3 ideas in a day and one of them really stands out to you. And that energy and that like affection or affinity that you feel for that one particular idea is the fuel for the creation to bring it to life, to bring it into this reality. Because you got to value it. If you don't value your own ideas, you're not going to take them from this intangible form, invest all of your energy into it to make it tangible, to make it real, to make it shareable, to make it something that is now in our mediated space. However,
well,
that works.
it's another important point that you place right in there. To honor, you have to be at the point to honor what comes forth, right? Or be prepared to honor what comes forth. And I think, a lot of folks are going to be afflicted with the mindset, even if they have a strong inspiration or see something beautiful, that maybe they don't know what to do with it or how to interact with it. And I think, you're honoring the idea and the energy of the artist is such, it's probably like that huge fundamental piece where you see yourself as, receiving and capable of art and transformation and creation. And I know you and I share that's in folks, but just getting them open to be like, that idea and that image that I saw was like one of the coolest things I've seen in a year and a half. Let me take a photo of it and think about it,
Yeah. And people underestimate the power of a random photo for restoring a line of thought. And I mean, I would challenge a listener to look in their photo roll and find a photo with no person or pet in it. Just a photo. Right? No humans, no animals, nothing. It's just a scene. And then when you look at that scene, you're like, oh, that was the bus station in Charlotte. I was there with Mike and we were doing the thing. And you can remember the conversation. And so like, if you need to take a snapshot, little freeze frame of a line of thinking, take a photo of your surroundings, not even a selfie. Just like take a photo of what you're looking at. And when you see that photo again, you'll be like, oh, and that's why they stopped making rotary engines or whatever. I guess I'm on a car kick today. Whatever. Okay, that's fine.
I like it. I mean, I totally understood not being able to get into the highest gear going through the city in a rapid lifestyle.
And I mean, that is, and we all want to get into 5th gear and do 120, but like, we don't always have the opportunity, but when we do get the opportunity, it really helps to have the ideas and the materials ready.
Yeah. We got Justin CM Brown here, and we are getting into a question we think about a lot. You dedicate yourself to this, Justin. Now I need you. What is art?
Okay. I've been thinking about this question a lot since we first got in contact. I believe now that art is anything that carries that creates a physical, mental, or spiritual reaction. And that can be intentionally made by humans. for the purpose of art, like painting. It can be made intentionally by humans, not for the purpose of art, like buildings or food. I consider food as art. I know that unfortunately it's not as commonly understood that way until you get into the really expensive stuff. But no, your average burrito is a work of art. I really, not to compare genres or mediums or anything like that, but there is an artistic value to food. So there is also things that were not created by humans that have spiritual, emotional, or physical responses, like nature, like a good sunset, like hearing bird songs when you wake up. You hear birds outside, and there's a feeling, there's an emotion that comes with it. You're like, okay,
Sure.
these birds, and of course it depends on how you think about birds, but like I think a safe average reaction to that is like, oh, this is pleasant, but it's not just that thought. There's a physical reaction to that, like it causes you to feel a certain way. And, that becomes a memory that you can link to, like about being comfortable or being like experiencing something pleasant. And that knowledge, the knowledge of those pleasant moments has a very real impact on how spiritually we process the world. Because in a life absent of those recognitions, it becomes a darker place. Not to say that, I mean, I don't think that there's an objective answer to that, but like and I understand that there are people that don't experience that, but like if you're able to have an experience like that, and if you can take joy from that, it impacts your worldview every day of your life, because you realize that there is, there are two kinds of people in the world, right? There are people who can experience joy in small moments, and there are people who don't know how yet. And it really changes the way you go about a bad day or a good day, or or about a career, or about your own artistic expression. Knowing that 1 minute out of your day is enough to have a good day. Like something really good happens to you for 60 seconds, and that's enough to make it a good day. Well, if you do 100 paintings, if you do 10 paintings, you're going to get something out of there that is not of the average experience. Something will go weird in that process, and that'll be the thing that'll make you love it. You'll say, oh, it was cold outside and I had my window open, and so my coffee steamed up my paint tray, and so they're a little thinner, so the sky looks, and it's just like these weird mechanical processes in the creation of art. But those things accidentally create beautiful works of art all the time. And it's that knowledge that just these little things, these little mechanical accidents or deliberate preparation, some people, you can do it, I guess. It's that there's a lot of value in 1 second. And art, when you see, like if you go to a museum, there are certain pieces that will stand out to you naturally, that you connect with. Man, I'm really losing myself on this train right now.
I want to say right now, just in this, not to interrupt, but I've been really in contact with what you're saying. I'm thinking about in terms of attitude and what happens to your mind in the transformation of the mind in creating art. Like when you said, there's these pieces and they could be accident and you do 10 of them, but you and I know that there are things there and there are things that are going to surprise. And what I become deeply fascinated in some of the great practices that you point out here is how the brain starts to transform and rewire. And some people might think in terms of mindfulness meditation, which can do all that as a separate discussion, but engaging with art and researching and learning about the transformation of the mind and what your reality is going to be. Like you said, that 1 second, that one piece, that 60 seconds. I'm really hearing what you're saying, because for me, it's a transformation. It could be connection to something larger, could be spiritual. I heard that word in what you said. So I really connect with what you're saying there, because I think about it, how it transforms us.
Right. Just to throw some academic stuff in here, because I love to. I recently
we got to make the university happy. I've been away from the university for a while, so we thank you for doing this.
Okay, here we go. Go Bruins! But this one is from Toronto University, Dr. Ann Mullen, talking about locating meaning in conceptual art, and it's a really great paper, and I really recommend you look it up. But Mullen describes it in 3 dimensions, and in the same ones that I'm talking about is the physical, the mental, and then the spiritual. And I'm not, I might be paraphrasing, but there is, there on the physical level, something happens when you see a piece of art, or, you think about, like, in order to really understand this mechanism, you got to dial it up. So imagine that you're like in your living room and you turn around and there is an apex predator, behind you, like a tiger or a bear or whatever is appropriate for your geographic region. And when you can imagine that feeling of like your stomach dropping out, right? And we felt this all before, like whether, I ran a red light and almost got T-boned or whatever.
Yeah.
We've had that feeling, right? That visceral feeling can be evoked. That's only one shade of it. That's that fear response. But there are a lot of different shades: joy response, love, and all those things. But it's unconscious, it's immediate, and it's extremely powerful. And it's felt. It is felt. It is not thought. It is not understood. It is felt. And so the physical response to art, I think people would say that it gets talked about enough. I don't think people really understand. I don't think people talk about the visceral reaction to art, and I mean, especially in media like TV and film, it creates a physical reaction. I listened to Adagio for Strings by Barber not too long ago. It was for a class. And I listened to it 3 times in a row because I love that song. And it just makes your body cry. You're just like, oh, all right, well, this is the finest sad work that's ever been created.
Yeah.
But it's a feeling. You're not thinking about it. You're not like, oh, these notes are making me sad. Right? Oh, I'm feeling grief about this song. It doesn't happen like that. It just it bypasses the thought. Right?
Yeah.
So we got our physical thing. Then, I'll skip the mental. The spiritual. It's the ability for humans to collect symbols in their life over time, which we use individually, internally, to construct a metaphysical worldview about what is good and bad, about what is us versus what is not us. Like, I identify with this, I don't identify with that. And those those symbols, what it represents, again, subconscious, it happens to you. It's happening without like your conscious involvement. You're like, well, that's something that, like, this painting has horrified me beyond all recognition, and I will always remember this as something, as a as a representation of how scary art can be. And you keep that, and it's like the symbol that like expresses like, okay, fear can exist in the form of an oil painting. And you realize that all of these emotions and these thoughts about these emotions can be represented symbolically through art, through music, and through word. I mean, it's really obvious on the surface when you talk about words, but once you start getting into like philosophy and linguistics, and you realize that I'm just making a bunch of mouth noises and they make your brain think of specific thoughts, it becomes this whole thing that unravels. So it's don't think about it too long, because the next time you go to a drive-through, you won't be able to do it.
Well, and it's, I think, again, on that point of what you're, and I think the terms of when you mention spirituality and the difficulty maybe around in describing the experience, I just picked up on, I think we know, you and I know, and others know the feeling or the whatever it is that happens to us. We've looked at the Monet, we stared at the Monet, and we can't imagine how such a thing is possible, but we're overwhelmed by a feeling that I think sometimes is tough to describe. There's one other piece. I read this quote, and it wasn't a quote, but it was a description, and it was right on the point of what you were saying around words, and it was talking about books. It's like, how is it that we have these marks, this ink, these paper sheets of trees, and we look at them and our mind experiences mass hallucination.
Yeah.
and I was stunned when I read it, and then I looked at it again and I said, oh my gosh, those symbols on the page are creating hallucinations in our mind. And as we go through Cormac McCarthy or whoever, we're reading that those hallucinations are shared and they're ours, and we're in some sort of state, right?
But what's crazy about that is that we can agree on it.
Right.
Is that these symbols create similar hallucinations. Is that we're able to interpret them similarly, at least in a way that we're able to communicate about it. And so it's you, me, and this and Tolstoy over here, and we like get to understand an idea that neither of us had, and this person is not alive anymore, and they're nowhere to be seen. And so these words, like, these little arrangements of ink, and it's really there is no end to that rabbit hole. There's no end to that.
I know.
I think it goes all the way through.
Go ahead.
Let me close out the trifecta here. So there's the physical, visceral response. There's the spiritual, collecting symbols from artwork and through our daily lives in order to create a metaphysical reality that we understand. And then there's the mental one, which is, what do I think about this? What do I think other people think about this? Depending on the medium that it's in, whether it's in a gallery, like, I don't know how true this is for everyone, but I think we can easily imagine standard art gallery behavior. The snooty, like, I don't want to use the word snooty. This scholarly, academic, the swirling the wine glass, well, this is a
We
modernist
know
take on,
it's okay. We
right,
we got the character. We got the character.
right.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
But so because we can imagine that person, that imaginary person affects how we behave. Whether, like, basically we imagine someone doing it and then we decide whether we want to go with that or do something different. And so, like, the social experience, the mental experience is a social one, and that it's mediated by the behaviors of other people, and they have taught us how to engage with art. Like the way like wine tasting is a really funny example, because you can tell when people are experienced at it because they do things very casually, and then you can tell who is new to it because they do the same casual things very intentionally.
Sure.
It's like the legs and the bouquet and all this. It's a performance. It's like, okay, I want to be in this club. I want to be in the club of people who have smart things to say at art galleries. So I'm going to go to an art gallery and I'm going to say something smart, right? And so it's a social process, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's incredibly important in both physical and spiritual ways for us to have references for our own interpretations. It's one thing to have an interpretation of a piece of art, but it's another thing to have someone next to you either agree or disagree with your interpretation, because then it becomes 3-dimensional or even 4-dimensional. It's like we argue with critics over time. This, in the 15th century, this was regarded as the worst painting ever painted, and now it's on the wall here. And so, like, we engage in this social conversation over time about each individual piece. And so those are these three, in your question, what is art? It is something that provokes response. And there are 3 categories of response that result in very different behaviors, understandings, and outcomes.
There's a lot of thought on what you had to say, and I wanted to ask you something a little bit related to this, Justin. That is a conversation I had with Pamela Valfer a few episodes back, and she really jostled my thinking, and I wanted to tell you about it. It's related to this, and tell me what your thoughts on it.
Mm-hmm.
For many times during the show, I've talked about the mystical or spiritual experience, or me as an art lover enthusiast, and being in the art museum, being in that sanctuary, being in that space. And that space is complicated, or I've learned it to be more complicated over time. I adored art museums. But the dynamic that I started to think about was maybe sometimes, that is the church for us. That you go to the church and you went to church, but like anything religious or spirituality, or with where you find art, it's also outside as well. And I think there's like a mental attitude to really deeply appreciate the wonders of like human artistic achievement that you find in a museum. But I felt like, as I talked about it, I thought that more that my thinking was a little bit quaint on that. So I really appreciate talking to you. And I do find art in a lot of places as you do, but maybe decentralizing adoration, or that this is the place to find art, and then you get to search harder elsewhere. And so, as you can tell, as I'm talking about it, it's jostled my thinking. I was wondering what you thought about, about the museum as the place to find it. Does the museum need to be and of course, there's lots of different museums. It's a little bit unfair, but do you think there are things that museums need to do around accessibility, or to minimize the exclusion of folks from art?
Okay. Yes, I do. I'll start by making a distinction here, and I'm not sure which side I'm going to land on. There is a big difference between museums and galleries. And I think of museums as being a historical store of previous artists who, have contributed to specific movements, or in order to fit in a museum, it has to be categorizable in some way. Even if it's uncategorizable, that's still a category. It's one of those things that kind of eats itself. Galleries, okay, galleries are, much wider range of sizes, and, very large galleries, very small galleries. And I think the thing that people forget about, and I'm not sure if this is intentional because I am not a gallery owner, I would not know how to go about this myself, but there is, in some cases, an erasure of the role of the curator in a gallery. And I would like to celebrate curators. And I think that curators in some cases, curators remove themselves from the visibility of it in order to present a more institutional, it's beyond critique because it's not done by a person. This art miraculously appeared on this wall in this perfectly arranged way. And so there's no one around to say oh, I really like this, or, oh, I didn't like this, or whatever. And okay, here we go. Here's the big deep dive. It's because we want to present human created work as though it were produced by nature, right? Because nature is beyond critique. What are you going to say to the ocean?
Yeah.
Even if you had a meaningful critique of the ocean, who are you going to tell?
Yeah.
There's nobody there. It's nature, and so people erase the names of, this one person, and I personally love the reasons why people pick art. Oh, I grew up in Detroit in the 80s and it was like this, so I like this. There's a story, there's a reason, it's a rational behavior as far as why this art is here. But people like to erase that to say, no, nature did this, it's accidental, oh my god, it's so beautiful, everybody look at how beautiful this accident that no one actually did is, and make sure you tell your friends or whatever. I think I love museums and I love art galleries, but I think it's unfortunate that art is being pushed into designated areas. I don't think art is like that. And I don't think that's actually how the world is. I think art is everywhere, but our socially prompted enjoyment of art occurs in specific places. The same person that goes to MoMA and stares for 30 minutes at a Vermeer or whatever, right? Look at the shading. They're just staring at the patch of brown in the corner. They're like, the brushwork is incredible. And and sure, it is. It's a great painting. But that same person would never look at the painting in the dentist office. There's a real painting by the dentist friend in the reception area. And you don't get up out of your seat and look at it because that's not where you do that. Oh, I'm at the dentist office. I'm supposed to read People magazine. I want to fit in with the other 3 people who are all here to get root canals. And so I'm not going to be weird about this. museums and galleries are set up for people to like really get weird with it and like get 2 inches from the wall and like
Yeah.
stare at it, and you're like, yep, that's definitely blue. And so, like, I think, again, to the listener, if you see a piece of art, go look at it. Like seriously, if it's above a water fountain, at your office, like whatever it is, and examine it. Is it a print? Is it a painting? Is it a photograph? Like what? And like, take it in, because someone did that. And there's so much behind it. It was, as long as you turn that switch on, which is I am interested in art, you'll start to see that it's kind of everywhere. Like there are gas stations in LA that have chandeliers and paintings. I was just in one. I know that sounds so crazy. And it's like there's paintings everywhere. There's art everywhere. And the only place that we really give ourselves permission to engage in this, like this absorption of art, are these museums and these galleries. And that's good. You should do that there. Absolutely. You paid your ticket, get your money's worth. But there is so much more. And the stories that go into the art that you see outside of museums might be as interesting as the artists who are, capital A artists, right?
Yeah.
So I would just say that the potential for artistic experience goes beyond museums and galleries, and you should absolutely support your local galleries and support local museums, because they're important. They're, also making sure that, there's a big thing right now in the art gallery or the museum and art gallery world about increasing representation. I saw an article that was all like, should we sell this one expensive painting by a white guy to buy 40 paintings from black women? And I was like, yeah, you should do that for sure.
Yeah.
You should definitely. That's yeah, for sure. Not, but like, when it comes to it, if you don't, museums, I don't know, galleries are a much more personal thing, but museums typically are a public service. They're a public good. And so if there is room for pressure to increase the accessibility of museums and galleries to more kinds of artists, because as we know, like, the Western aesthetic art world, white men got a really far head start on making sure they get the wall space. And you know what? I've seen that story. So I think we have an opportunity to increase the representation in these spaces, and it would make these spaces so much cooler, so much more interesting, and so much more spiritually fertile, because you actually get to see the range of human experience instead of a small segment of the range of human experience. So that's my take on museums and galleries. They're awesome. Support them. Get involved. Make sure that, when it comes, like, on their Instagrams, they're definitely, any art gallery or any museum right now is all like, hey, we're trying to increase representation for Indigenous artists or whoever, whatever the local cause is. And I would encourage you to stand on the side of marginalized artists to get them that representation, because we've had enough white male artists to dominating museum and gallery space. That's enough. And I say that as a white male artist. Like, I'm chill. Like, I'm more interested in hearing other people's stories at this point. I'm going to put out my art, but I would like to see space go to more stories, because it makes me more full as a person to hear and understand and appreciate other people and other cultures and other views on things. That, and hot take, I guess.
No, I really appreciate what you have to say, and in different ways of thinking about the museum. And again, not to devalue, but being in this spirit, you being an artist philosopher of critique, of looking at what is, and thinking about its history, and really the opportunity with awareness to make it more inclusive and to see all the things that we want to see. Justin, here's the big one. Here's the big one. Uh, why is there something rather than nothing? I know you've been thinking about this.
I
And
have, and I
yeah,
think I have a pretty good answer. I would argue that it's not something rather than nothing. I would say that in the case of everything, you need nothing to create something. The nothing, the space between, is what enables the possibility of perceiving something as something. Otherwise, it would be everything. If there was no nothing, it would just be everything. But the nothing in between all the somethings is what enables us to perceive them as discrete objects and discrete pieces of art. It's I'm sure that it's been said in many other places, but I'm quoting it from Daft Punk, is the perfect song is framed with silence. And silence is the unnoticed complement of every song you've ever heard. It's the unrealized, is that in that silence, everything else exists. It's just not expressed. And so there's also the quote from Ray Cummings. I know that this is sometimes attributed to Einstein, but it is Ray Cummings, which is time. The only reason time exists is that so everything doesn't happen at once. Is that the time enables us to see things as happening in the morning and in the afternoon. Without that measure of distance between those two things, the nothing between morning and afternoon, it would just be one thing. And so nothing turns everything into a lot of somethings.
I hearing your answer in the context of perception, right? I really like that, the perception amongst the somethings and nothings in order to perceive, right? It's a necessary part of perceiving. I haven't quite had an answer like that. That's
it breaks. Nothing is what breaks up the universe into manageable parts.
All right, Justin. Listeners here, you put out a lot of art, and I enjoy following your work. It's on Instagram, but I want you to tell folks where to find your art, your thinking, music, visuals, words. Where do folks go?
All right. Well, thank you. Love this part. The thing I'm on every day is my Instagram, JCMBMade. So JCMBMADE. That is my business. It's also jcmbmade.com. And that is the collection of all of my visual art and some of my writing. My musical alter ego is named Emperor Steve. I put out a 27 song audio gallery in 2021. In 2021. And I'm currently working on some new stuff now. but that's emperorsteve.com, also at emperorsteve. I also have a novel / screenplay. I say / screenplay because it's not really either, which is a piece of, I'll just call it absurdist fiction. And that is zodiacwaning.com. So zodiac like horoscope, and then waning like waxing and waning.com. But if you want to talk to me, and I love talking to people about art and philosophy, and I love encouraging people to create art or sharing whatever knowledge I have, is JC and Be Made on Instagram. You can email me through my website, but please don't video call me without texting first.
Not that accessible. I wanted to thank you so much for Justin for coming on the show, and I really and having guests on. I like our conversation, doing philosophy and dropping into some of the deeper elements about our experience, but also I think you have a lot of practical, super practical setup to enjoy and make art advice that you talked about at the beginning. And I really think that's extremely helpful just in our conditions, or a lot of people's conditions, of not all of a sudden pulling everything together, figuring out everything you have to do, but to integrate behavior in your life that sets you up for art. And I think that's a profound, I think you and I know that's a profound change. And like I had mentioned before, I get excited about how the mind can heal, how the mind can reorder, how the mind can see beauty more regularly. And somebody would have to give some convincing argument how that's not healthy for us.
Yeah, and I want to drive this home real quick, is that for people who either create art and don't identify as an artist, or for people that don't even create art, welcome, thanks for listening. But here's the thing, is that when you create art, you do not have to sell art to be an artist. You do not have to share your art to be an artist. Okay? If you create things, anything, pictures, music, sculptures, leaf arrangements, stone piles, whatever it is, if you create that, you do not have to sell it, and you do not have to share it to be an artist. And what's really important is that artists, as we know, are respected members of society. And you know what? Like, given the way that the economy and society and politics and all these things have treated the average person, I really think that there is a lot of value in seeing yourself as an artist, as a member of this quote unquote highly respected class. You could say, yo, you can't treat me like this. I'm an artist. Like, I shouldn't be doing this with my time. I'm an artist. I need to focus not on, there are things to focus on, and there are things to let go of, because I'm an artist. Because as an artist, I need to make art. And I understand the economy and rent and labor and all that sucks. And it takes a lot of the time. But what time you do have, if you are able to convert that into an identity where you see yourself as an artist, there is the thing that happens that enables you to look around at the world and say, this isn't right. I'm an artist and I'm being treated badly, and we should treat artists well. And so it becomes this thing where once you're involved in this community, it's like human creativity is incredibly powerful and important. And so what kind of world do we live in where it's not valued? And that's kind of how you step over that line in the sand, and you say, as an artist, I want to make the world better for myself and other artists and other human beings, because the creativity and the art and that experience is one of the easiest ways to know that life is worth living.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a special kind of magic. And yeah, I want to thank you in talking you, connecting with me on, and exploring the ethos of kind of the ethos beneath the show, and finding that magic and transformation. Hey everybody, make sure you check out Justin CM Brown. Find him on Instagram, and his websites, diverse artistic output, words, incredible visuals and displays, and of course, music as well. I wanted to thank you, Justin, for sharing what you do, and actually sharing your attitudes and the cultivation of habits and talking about art. Really appreciate you and wanted to thank you for spending some time on something rather than nothing.
Ken, thank you so much, and I wish you all the best, and I will continue. I will be a continued listener. So thank you very much, everybody listening. Please follow. Make sure you subscribe to Kim. Follow me. We'll hang out, talk about art. It's cool.
Thanks, brother. It's been a great pleasure.
Yep, same here. Thank you.
This is Something Rather Than Nothing.